Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention for just a moment, please. Thank you. While we're enjoying our lunch, let's listen to news from the New Lab from its director, Amanda Hashey, who will speak for about 15 or 20 minutes. Amanda's strengths are in facilitation, public engagement, systems thinking, sustainability, and process design. She believes that in order to solve our biggest problems, we need to, number one, understand them from diverse perspectives to see the whole system. Number two, listen to each other with curiosity and an open mind. And number three, we need to experiment. New Lab is the convener of the processes to dig into root causes, innovate lasting solutions, and then change the way we tackle big problems. Please welcome Amanda Hashey.
Okay, first of all, 101, make sure people get to mingle and network during lunch breaks, so I'm going to be quick so you guys can do that important networking that we need to do at these conferences. So, New Lab, who's heard of New Lab? Awesome. Who's heard of the Social Policy Research Network? And the Pondish Pandey Center? Oh, a little less. Okay, so we'll talk about the Pondish Pandey Center and a little bit of the history of New Lab. So Social Policy Research Network and the Pondish Pandey Center Pondish Pandey Center works on encouraging an entrepreneurial mindset and using social enterprise to solve some of these complex issues that we're talking about. So Karina and Nick sitting here, you guys did this on purpose, didn't you? About 2.5 years ago, sitting at a table together, started chatting about if we brought the things that both of our organizations do really well together, it's very similar to this in social innovation lab stuff that we're hearing. And so they created New Lab. And so they got me involved, and this is where we're at today. So I just want to draw some attention to some people in the room, if you can see these photos. Rose Moss and Lewis Muirhead, if you want to just stand up so people can know, and Nick Scott is also here. So these people and myself are around for the next day and a half. If you have any questions about New Lab and what we're up to, don't hesitate to come up and chat with us. So one thing when we talk about social innovation labs, I think people have different ideas of what it is that I actually do on a daily basis. So I think my friends think that I'm at Camp Kumbaya and that we're trying to get people to work together that don't normally work together. This photo of me with two phones, what my mom thinks that I do, is actually me on the phone with CRA on one phone and Service Canada on the other phone because they weren't willing to connect themselves by phone, so I decided to do that. What society thinks I do, when I say I work in a lab, I think the white coat image when we're not in these kind of circles really comes to people's minds. Karina, is that pretty much what you think? Yeah. Yeah. And then, I don't know if you can tell, that photo there is a gentleman herding cats. Sometimes that feels like what we do. And what we actually do is bring diverse groups of people together to work on some of these complex issues, just like you're hearing, especially from the panel that was up here this morning. Not only do we have all these complex issues, our organizations and institutions don't have time or white space to kind of spend the time that these big, hairy problems need. And also, we're all working in silos. We say that all the time, but very rarely do we have vehicles where we actually bring people out of those silos and try to get them working together. And that's what we're trying to do at New Lab. I'm going to skip these because I say them all the time, and if you know about New Lab, then you probably already heard me say them. So just quickly, our formula, we gather multi-stakeholder groups, we apply a systems thinking approach to better understand the system as a whole, we use design thinking or user-centered design, we've heard a lot about that this morning and probably more as the next day and a half go on, and then we prototype and test solutions. So get out early, often, and get feedback from those very important users we keep talking about. So first year we did an academy program, and the academy program is where teams of people come together, they apply to participate, and through the program they learn some of those kind of methodologies that I just talked about on the previous slide. In the first academy, I think we have, is Randy Hatfield in the room? There we go. He's right there at the table. You can ask him what his experience was like in the first academy working on homelessness and nonprofit housing issues. So we learned a lot in that first academy process, and we brought some of those early adopters around the table to better understand the process that we wanted to use, the methodology that we were using, and also to teach and build that capacity with those teams. So we've had to date 9 teams go through the academy working on everything from nonprofit housing to gender equality, aging, food security, adult literacy. You can imagine the kinds of things that, and I'm saying kind of the big complex problem, but what we actually do is get them to kind of narrow in on a section of that issue that they really want to work on, similar to what the panelists were talking about earlier with hackathons and that kind of thing. I'm going to tell one particular story of a team that we had. Does anybody know Jeanne Brideau? A few people in the room. So she is a fantastic lady, lives in Moncton. She's a retired school teacher. She did most of her career in Ottawa, but was from here. She came back here, didn't really have a great network. She was taking care of her parents and really saw the aging process and lived the experience of that and said, there's some real negative impacts to ageism here. Isolation and all the things, dementia and all this kind of things that happen when we're isolating seniors and having negative attitudes to our seniors. So she said, there's something I want to do about it. And she knew her experience was in the school system, so she knew she wanted to do something around intergenerational work in schools. So she brought a team together of some like-minded individuals who also were working in an organization that she had started called Senior Action. We helped her find some people at social development who were working on this similar ageism issues in government. And we brought in a private sector manager from a nursing home. And for a 6-month process, they worked together at the table around what can we do around mitigating the negative impacts of ageism. This team, at the beginning of this process, ageism was only an issue for seniors. And they needed to get into the schools, and the seniors had to give their wisdom to the young people. And so through the process, we brought young people into the lab with the team, and they realized that actually young people also suffer from ageism and there's negative impacts of ageism on the other side of the aging spectrum. This was kind of a bit of a mind-blowing experience for the team, and it didn't just happen in one workshop, it happened over time. In one of the workshops, we got them to do profiles of their users. And then we got them to say, what assumptions do you have about these users? And then we got them to say, all right, go into the streets and test that assumption on these people. And one of the participants, Silvio, I don't know if Silvio's in this pit. Yes, Silvio, the gentleman there that's on the far left. So one of the assumptions he had was young people have negative attitudes towards seniors. So he went out in the street, in Main Street in Moncton, and walked into one of the bars in the afternoon and asked the young girl that was there, early 20s, do young people have negative attitudes towards seniors? And she said, I don't know, I volunteer in a nursing home once a week and I teach people how to knit. And he was like, whoa. He came back from lunch like totally challenged all of the beliefs that he actually had about what ageism was and how young people thought about older people. And then bringing young people into the workshop to work on this, they're in the process still of developing a curriculum an intergenerational learning curriculum that goes in the school systems it goes with existing curriculum, so teachers don't have to do something else. It kind of can go in with what they already have to do, and it's co-learning. It's not just the young people, the older people teaching the younger people what's best, but it's a co-learning environment. And Jeanne is seeing such great participation from both sides of this, and they're still testing and developing their prototype, which is a guidebook for teachers. And so through this, we have availability of a prototype fund, so there's a little bit of money to kind of get those prototypes off the ground and tested. So meetings, printing things, getting things designed, that kind of thing. Then in our first academy program, we had Adrian O'Prey from the Business Council and Alex LeBlanc from the Multicultural Council, they were participating in the First Academy program. They both identified that immigration retention was an issue that both of their organizations held at the core, and was something that just kept being repeated and repeated and didn't seem to be improving. On Adrian's side, businesses in New Brunswick are actually saying no to business because they can't find the talent that they need. That's not just low skill, it's very high skilled, it's manufacturing, it's rural, it's urban. And so she has been working on this issue and recognizing that nothing was changing, and that the businesses keep repeating that we just can't find the talent that we need. So Alex and Adrian participated in the First Academy. And they thought after that first experience, we aren't enough. We need a room full of people working on these issues, on this issue. So they got the provincial government on board, and now we have an economic immigration lab guided by the question, how might we become leaders in attracting and welcoming and retaining newcomers to the New Brunswick economy? So this project is not about refugee resettlement, it's actually about the economic stream of immigrants that come through, because actually there's a lot of supports for refugee settlement. But when somebody comes here for a job in an IT firm or in a manufacturing company in a rural area, there's not as much settlement support for them and their family as refugees get. So we're looking at how do we actually fill that gap. So we're in the first cycle of this lab right now. We have 40 participants from the settlement agencies, from the chambers of commerce, different municipalities, all across the province. We have employers at the table, and we have a lot of newcomers at the table. We have newcomer international students, low-skilled and high-skilled, and entrepreneur newcomers. And they are bringing some incredible passion to the table of lived experience that they've had, and a real interest in trying to fix, make the situation better. So you'll see these arrows are actually the 7 teams that we have working on different aspects of the issue. So some are working on supporting the entrepreneur stream. Some are working on how do we actually make New Brunswickers more welcoming and more accepting of newcomers to the region. Some are working on spouse integration. So what do we do with that spouse that comes in that doesn't have credential recognition or the community that they can feel integrated into? We have 2 teams working on employer support. So how do we even help employers that are looking to hire through an international stream? They don't have an HR department or people on staff who've done this before. It can be quite an onerous process. So how do we actually help that employer navigate the system a bit better? So they're in just finishing the first cycle of this lab. They're out there testing prototypes, they're interviewing users, and ideally this is something that will continue on as a 3-year project and become a bit of a hub or an R&D kind of action research oriented place where things can be tested, failed, tried, and learned. The other thing that's happening is, of course, each of the teams is working on a prototype. But if you think about, I guess this team is working on employer support. So right now we have a program called the Atlantic Immigration Pilot Program. And so they're staffing up ONB, ACOA, the Population Growth Secretariat, to try to help service some of these employer needs. At the table we have employer, ONB, ACOA, Population Growth, and an Economic Development Agency. So they're working on a prototype. But also, when they go back to their day jobs, these are the people that are working on the programs and policies that are going to start to service the employer support. So this is something that's interesting. I don't know if anybody's going to, or if Jamie Gamble's in the room, about measuring this stuff. We can measure what's happening with the prototype, but how can we actually take responsibility for some of the things that have rippled out of those discussions and user testing and interviews at those tables? So you can just imagine kind of networking that's happening in the lab space. So I meant to, and I didn't do, if 2 people want to donate their lunch boxes, an empty, clean lunch box. And if one of you wants to write Academy on one lunch box and the other one write Economic Immigration Lab on the other, So we have applications for the Academy open right now. We're changing the format of the Academy, so it's a 5-day sprint in February. So you can come in, any complex social issue that you are working on that you would like to get multi-stakeholder group and go through this process around the table. Applications are open now. They close December 15th, and you can get all that information on the website. And if you're interested, you can drop your card in this box. And if you're interested in following the Economic Immigration Lab or applying for a future cycle, you can put your card in this box. And I just want to draw some attention to some of the participants of the Economic Immigration Lab that are here today in case you want to go and chat with them. So I think there's a few people, if you want to raise your hand if you're participating in the Economic Immigration Lab. There's 2 there, and Rama maybe just out, probably doing a call. She's usually a very efficient lady. That's it for what I had to say. I don't know if there's a quick questions. Also, we're here for the next day and a half if you want to chat about anything. Yes. So normally what happens is people come with a little bit of a team. The Immigration Lab, people are coming as individuals, and they're forming around issues that they want to work on together. Through the Academy, if it's just you and you have an idea of what you want to work on and you have a dream team in mind, we can help you put that together. That's the benefit of being with the Pondish Pandey Center and Social Policy Research Network, is we can help bring academics to the table, or even if they're not participating, we can connect you with them. That's one thing that we did for the aging team. So if it's just you and you have a problem, come chat with us for sure. That's the benefit of this kind of networked process that we're using. Other questions? No? Okay, great. Enjoy your lunch.
Thanks very much, Amanda, for that look into what's going on in the new lab and for bringing your energy and big picture systems thinking to problems large and small. She's great at putting people together. For those who love labs, there's a lot more content tomorrow with Alex Ryan, so don't miss it. A reminder that we will reconvene at 1 sharp in the 3 meeting rooms for workshops and panels, and enjoy the networking and the lunch.